Welcome to SeedPod. I'm AJ, and I'm going to be hosting this week, along with the normal guys, Calvin and John. But before we get into the super special episode that I have for you all, we got to do our normal segment. So first,
all right. So before we get into the podcast, we have to do our fun disclaimer. Everything in this podcast is strictly the opinions of the host and does not reflect that of our employers. Also, please do not try to find our employers.
Invasive of the week. What do we got this week, guys?
Bamboo.
Yeah.
My sister texted me earlier today asking me what my suggestions were to get rid of bamboo and if I'd ever dealt with it. And I am firm above Mason-Dixon-ish line. And I think it's more of a southerly species, so I deferred to you two on this one. So yeah, what do you guys got for me?
My suggestion is you move.
Yeah. I suggested employing violence.
So unfortunately she can't move. She has both a good job and a house, and I think she's currently what's called literally robbing the bank. I think she has an under 2% loan.
Oh, wow.
Because she refinanced during like peak COVID. And yeah, so she is literally robbing the bank as legally as that is possible.
Oh, well, good for her.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So failing that, what are your other options?
Okay, so let's just chat for a quick second about our bamboos. So there are no native species of bamboo in North America. There's three species of cane in North America, but I wouldn't say those are bamboo.
Yeah, some people throw them in there. I mean, they're.
I think it's in the same family.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the same genus.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when we say bamboo, we mean Phyllosis stickacea. Yeah, whatever.
Jesus Christ.
Sure.
And that's the genus. That's the genus. The most common one is going to be Phyllosis stickacea aurea. That's going to be golden bamboo. But there's like a dozen species.
Yeah, there's a ton
imported.
of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're imported obviously for ornamental reasons, as well as unfortunately people are trying to make it for agricultural reasons. Because so these bamboo is a grass species, and it grows super super fast. It creates a lot of biomass, and it creates really strong fibers. People use it in construction materials all the time. You can find lots of products that are made out of bamboo. I don't like it for a lot of reasons in forestry. But people are trying to make it an agricultural product in the Southeast because it grows really fast and it spreads like crazy.
Yeah.
Hey AJ.
Although,
what is the South's reason for wanting everything to grow as quickly as humanly possible? Like, what's up with that?
Because if it grows really fast, we can cut it really fast and then make more money and then wash, rinse, repeat. That's it. It's. I think it's.
I know that's the answer, but
and also when you have like a growing season that's 10 months long, you can squeeze more rotations of things in the same amount of time too. That's I think part of it. I would say one thing to keep in mind with bamboos is there's kind of two, like, I don't know, they're types. Let's say there's your clumping bamboos and then your kind of running bamboos. And as far as I mean, they're both bad. Yeah. But the clumping ones are a little less bad in that they don't spread quite so quickly. They don't have rhizomes that will go shooting off 10 feet under a fence and popping back up into a new little cluster. Like they're going to spread a lot more slowly. So they're a little bit less of a pain in the ass to deal with. They're a little bit less of a concern when you see them. But the old place where I used to live, still down here in the Southeast, but we had a clump of, I don't even know which bamboo it was. I never ID'd it, but it was one of the clumping ones. There was a big cluster of that had been planted behind this house, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago. Like they used to use them for fishing poles, that kind of thing. And it hadn't spread at all in the 4 years I lived at that place. And talking to the landowner, like, hadn't really spread much more than like a couple feet since he was a kid. And that's not with anyone cutting it or anything like that. But some of those running ones, like, they will go crazy in no time.
Oh, yeah. And I think this one's a running one because she was saying, it's three lots down from her, and she's getting it in her garden.
Oh, that's 100% a running bamboo. I would bet it's probably golden bamboo is what I would bet. So just for a little bit more to close the loop on bamboo. So running bamboo is the biggest concern. So AJ said rhizomatous. So bamboos are grass. They don't have roots as we typically think of roots. So they have what are called rhizomes are very much like, and they act a lot like roots, but they're botanically different enough that we call them rhizomes. And so the rhizomatous bamboo, golden bamboo, and a couple other species of bamboo reproduce by sending out runners, and those runners can get through a lot of things. Like they can break through foundations of buildings and all kinds of stuff. And anytime that runner hits air, it throws up a new bamboo cane or new stick of bamboo, and that's how it spreads rapidly and forms a really dense cluster that's so dense you can't walk through it, you can't burn through it. It's crazy how dense these things get. It's awful.
Yep, it's not great. So what do you do about it? How do we treat bamboo? You can
glyphosate.
We can go through the bad options first. You can try to dig it up and get all the rhizomes and do all that crap. And maybe you can stay on top of the edges of the infestation that way. But yeah, this is something that requires chemicals to actually control. If you just need to contain it, then yeah, you can get into the HDP and the polypropylene, barriers. Essentially, you're talking digging 3 feet into the soil and putting a plastic sheet down there to keep the rhizomes, because they'll hit that and bounce off, essentially, to keep them from spreading. Yeah. But that's obviously that's not going to get rid of the root problem. That's just going to keep it contained. So yeah, if it's coming in from your neighbor's yard and you can't. I almost said you can't kill your neighbor. I mean, you shouldn't do that either. You can't kill your neighbor's bamboo. Then maybe that's that's an option, at least, to keep it from continually becoming a problem in your property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least for her, I think it's going to be herbicide. Just get, like, the space where she has to work with. It's not quite a shotgun lot like in New Orleans or something like that, but it's a pretty tight space, so she's just going to have to but glyphosate it a couple times, or just keep on top of it, I think.
Yeah, and so the glyphosate can be applied either foliar, so spraying it on the leaves, or hack and squirt, so you hack down the cane itself and you apply it to the cane, individual stems. It's a real pain in the butt to try to do the hack and squirt, though. Yes. And then some people will try to inject it with like hypodermic needles into the stem of the cane, and that's.
I've seen people try to do that with Japanese knotweed. I'm just I don't have the patience.
No, I don't have
the patience.
That's craziness.
I would just foliar spray with both of them, because the chance of you hitting non-targets is super low, because they're both really dense and the shade is really dense. So you're not going to have really anything in there that you're not hoping to kill, just because nothing else is going to live in. So
yeah. So actually, fun fact: something does live underneath my Japanese knotweed patches. It was Japanese hops.
Oh,
yeah. So I successfully, as successfully as you can do it with knotweed, I cleared out an area mostly clear, and then I just had a flush of just so many hops, and that was brutal. And so I killed one, and another one comes back, and yeah. It's fun.
That cluster that was behind the place I used to live had the weirdest thing. It was a Carolina spice bush, like, living directly under it. And it was the only place on that whole lot, because there was like 20 acres or so of like wooded pine, actually decent shape too, pine forest kind of behind it, and there's no spice bush anywhere out there either. I have no idea where this thing came from, but it was just chilling under in the shade of this bamboo cluster. It was the weirdest thing.
More power to it.
Yeah. So before we move off this, I have one last thing on bamboo. So bamboo is problematic around the world because people have introduced it around the world. And one of the big issues that gets run into is it grows so densely that people can hide in it. So there's a really interesting paper that came out 2 or 3 years ago at this point about the social impacts of bamboo, and there's a lot of sexual assault that happens from people hiding in bamboo, and then assaulting people who pass by.
So never would have guessed that.
Yeah, that's the weirdest That's just a very weird, specific connection and thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so the impacts of invasive species. Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
So next segment is the Forest Minute. So something cool that happened or something cool you saw out in the woods or out, well, not necessarily in the woods, but let's just say, out of the office. Who wants it first?
Oh, I'll go first. So it is herbicide season again for us. And so I'm training our technician and our intern about how to spray herbicides and manage invasive species, and they're taking off with it. So I'm pretty happy with how things are going. And now I'll do spray 1,500 more acres.
Awesome.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Just
that's
a
fine.
tiny little thing you have to do.
Gotta pay for the new hat somehow.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'll go next. So I am, after 2 months, I have successfully planted 30,000 tree seedlings, more or less by myself. I had help a couple of times with a tree planter, like a machine tree planter, but not as many days as I had hoped. But yeah, so I got all that done. But more locally and stuff like that, all of our bumblebees have started popping up and flying around and looking for places to settle and set up a nest and stuff like that. So that's just a really nice. The insects are coming back alive, and it's starting to sound like nature's back, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Always happy to see. Yeah.
Well, I was going to
about you,
say, it's been raining a bunch here recently, and so have not really been doing a whole lot out in the woods. So I was going to say I didn't really have anything to say, but I just thought of something, which is that I actually saw Spranthes blooming for the first time the other day, which that's a tiny little orchid, also known as lady's tresses.
Oh.
There's a whole bunch of species of them, and I didn't stop to ID it down to the actual species, but they pop up this time of year, and I hadn't seen any yet. I've actually got a few of them popping up in the lawn even, which is kind of cool. I'm gonna have to weed whack around them so they don't get mowed down or whatever. But hopefully the weather's clearing up, and we'll get back at it next week, and maybe I'll see some fun critters or something. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think my woodland minute for next time we do this is going to be, it finally rained, because it has rained once this entire spring. Yay, Dust Bowl 2. And so yeah.
Oh, so you all hadn't gotten any of the big systems that moved through further south then?
Oh, I got all of those.
Yeah, so we're shooting the area I'm working in is basically shooting the gap. Everything's either going north or south of us for the past 3 years right now.
Wow.
And so I think we had maybe 6 inches of snow the entire winter, and we normally get 2-3 feet total. And then obviously you're supposed to get multiple inches of rain between March and May, and I think we have maybe 2 inches of rain. We're supposed to have 6 to 9. So
yep, things getting a little crispy on you.
Oh yeah, things are getting crispy. Multiple burn bans. The soil is basically concrete. So it's getting interesting. But hopefully we'll get some here soon to break it for a little bit.
Fun times.
Okay, AJ, what are we talking about today?
So this week we're going to talk about wildlife conservation and management in the United States, what we call the North American model of wildlife management.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
So you can't see this, but I just did a big 2 thumbs up. Super pumped. I love the North American model of wildlife management.
Hell yeah. I do too. Does it have its
I don't know
problems?
anything.
Absolutely, and we'll get to those.
Yeah, sure.
But before we get to that, let's start with an easy question. So what is the word, because I said it in what we're talking about, what does the word conservation mean to you guys?
Oh, thank God it wasn't wildlife.
No, it's an easy
definition
question.
of wildlife. That's easy. What is the word conservation? So conservation to me is protecting and ensuring things are going to be around into the future. I am very much in the Gifford Pinchot model of conservation, in that conservation allows for use. That use can be consumptive, so timber harvesting or hunting. It can be non-consumptive, but I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with humans using resources and systems. We've always used them. They've always been used. So That's conservation to me.
Yeah, I think I would have said smart usage, steady supply, if you will, of things, whatever that thing is, in much simpler terms. And
perfect. I like both of those definitions or explanations. I don't fundamentally disagree with either of them. Yeah, that element of use of exploitation's not it's got a negative connotation, but it just, in the sense that to exploit a resource means to use it. Conservation means doing that, wisely, sustainably, and you can contrast that with preservation, right? That's kind of the two sides of a lot of two sides of the environmental movement, you could say, is conservationists versus preservationists, and what the difference is between those. And so the North American model is fundamentally.
Wait! Can we just close the loop on that?
Oh yeah.
So
absolutely.
So I mentioned the GIF for those environmentalist historians that you'll see instantly where this is going. So the opposite side of that of GIF and Pinchot is John Muir, who was a preservationist, and Muir does not believe he's also a racist. But Muir did not believe.
I mean,
that's a wide net back then.
Yeah,
he's noted racist for the time. Muir did not believe in the use of systems and things. So that's the big difference. And so preservation can best be seen like the National Park Service, where historic management of NPS and national park systems in the U.S. was the forest looks like this one thing. It should always look like that forever. And my big issue with that is that's not how ecosystems work. It's glass. It's you're putting ecosystems into glass, and that's not how
you're turning in nature. Yeah, you're turning nature from a thing that lives literally and breathes literally into a diorama like you'd see in a museum, and that's just not how it works. We know that now.
And it fundamentally cuts every bit of human dimensions out of the equation too. Not just from we're not gonna touch it because we need to preserve it the way it was before there were humans. Okay, let's set aside that we have ecosystems in this on this continent that have absolutely now evolved with human influence, and that's part of it now. But it also fundamentally removes human influence on the restoration and let's make things better because we done already fucked them up side of things, right? Calvin, are there any large predators on the eastern U.S. besides humans?
We got black bears. That's it.
Black bears.
Yep.
And coyotes kind of encroaching a little bit.
They're not. There's some mesocarnivores.
Yeah.
And we got our mid-level carnivores.
So do we have anything that keeps deer populations in check?
Absolutely not.
Hey, no. Exactly. We already that toothpaste has been squeezed out of the tube and we can't put it back in. So we have to actually get our hands dirty and manage things because preservationist ethics do not allow for that. And that's kind of a fundamental contrast with what the North American model tries to do.
Well, and the other thing is, and I know that I'm just really harping on this, but I think it's a really important point to make because at the heart of everything we're about to talk about is that's not how ecosystems work. You can't preserve an ecosystem to be exactly like it was in 1805 because trees grow,
Yep.
Animals age.
Oh, yeah.
Populations change. So trying to preserve it exactly one way at one point in time is an impossibility just because things are alive. Okay,
it's why the good Lord invented photographs. Anyways,
yeah. So we all pretty much agree. Conservation is you can call it wise use or sustainable use. And I do want to hit this point again, as Calvin brought it up. It's that use does not have to be consumptive. There's non-consumptive uses of these resources. A salt marsh, a functioning salt marsh ecosystem with songbirds and arthropods and all that kind of stuff, that's providing ecosystem services to humanity as a whole, regardless of whether a person ever dips a paddle in the water or goes wading through there. It's still a use. It's still providing something for us. And I think that's a really important point
it is,
kind of
and it's one that I agree with 100%, AJ. I just find it personally, it's a bear to try to explain to a lot of people of like, yeah, there's just something intrinsic. I see it as just kind of intrinsic, an intrinsic good about this wetland. But a lot of people I run into, well, soggy, smelly, I could drain it and grow crops, or I could plant walnut trees on it and they could grow and I could earn a bajillion dollars. That's not how that works, but that's how a lot of people see it. Or it's just, I don't know. I have a hard time trying to a good way to explain it.
There's one analogy that I've gotten, I think, decent mileage out of talking to the public, talking to private landowners about, because I always want to know, like, hey, I found this cool plant, or here's this thing I saw that's neat on your property, and they always want to know, well, what's it good for, right? And
yeah.
And sometimes I have a nice answer, a good answer for that. Like, oh, well, that's fucking quail food right there, or that's deer salad. Like, great, that's good enough. I don't need to give them a whole spiel about why they should be happy to see plenty of pokeweed. Like, yeah, grow big deer, fine. That's what you care about. We'll say that's cool. But the analogy that I have gotten use out of, like, trying to say, like, there's all this neat stuff, and it doesn't all have to make sense to you directly, is to kind of compare it to, like, a car engine or like a transmission,
okay.
a complex mechanical thing that they know works and they know it's good for something, but you couldn't necessarily pull a single part out of that, put it on the workbench in front of them and say, what's that do? Explain what this particular gear does. Like, they might not be able to do it. And so my argument to them is always like, just because we can't actually say 100% what this thing is good for doesn't mean it's not serving an important purpose to get the whole thing running. I've gotten some decent mileage out of that. I've gotten a few, people kind of like, oh, okay, I never thought about it that way.
And also, things have an inherent right to exist if they're native.
Yes.
A tree that has a right to exist.
And that's usually my go-to version of it, Calvin. Yeah. It's just like and I try to overwhelm them with just my excitement about nature in general, and go through that side of things. But I really like the example or the metaphor of doing.
I mean, and we all know there's some people that the argument of things having a right to exist isn't going to hold water.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Anyway,
let's
sorry.
Get to the wildlife
we're getting to the North American model of wildlife conservation. So
man, give me the pillars, dog.
Oh boy, we'll get there. We will get there. But okay, so starting off though, it's a model, right? This is not. There's not, the North American model in as many words is not something you're going to find, written into the U.S. Constitution or into U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service policies. It's really just more of a conceptual framework. It's a construct of common themes, commonly understood principles, and it's kind of just this, like I said, a conceptual framework of how we do wildlife management in the U.S. But that doesn't mean every agency, every person, every wildlife biologist, everyone in the U.S. even implements it in the same way. So like I said,
they should.
Yeah, okay. So that just, once you keep that in mind, it's a model. It's kind of a conceptual framework we use to talk about the way we do these things, but it's not like it is not written down anywhere really, in any I guess legal sense, I would say. Like it's written down. There's plenty of papers about it. But yeah, sorry, got sidetracked. So originally when I was putting this together, I was going to do kind of a big compare and contrast of like other models of wildlife management or wildlife conservation, talk about the European models and stuff. But there's a lot to all of that, and I didn't really want to, there's a big hole to go down. And honestly, part of the problem too is I don't have access to a lot of journals because I work for the government and we can't afford the fees. So,
dog, you just gotta do that. You know I can solve this problem.
But there's a few common differences though between the North American and a lot of other models. And so let me backtrack a little bit. The North American model has also influenced tons of other countries and models of wildlife conservation. So there's always some of this interplay going on. But a lot of these other models of wildlife conservation are they're a little bit more on that. They fall more on that preservationist side of things. They want to keep nature in some snapshot state, or even go beyond preservationist. There may be, I don't know if this is probably written in a paper somewhere, but I'm just going to call them restorationist. Like, they want to take things back to some particular snapshot in history. And that's where we get all these, the rewildings and the de-extinctings and all that fun stuff, which that was a whole tangent. Sorry, I just kicked the microphone.
A whole other thing.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing. We don't need to get into that. A lot of them, they're just kind of attempting to restore ecosystems to some arbitrary state that doesn't really take into account the current current land use, current landscape. Like, people aren't going anywhere. Climate change is a thing. Fragmentation is a thing. You have to build that into your management, or you're not going to actually get anything done. So that kind of that's quick and dirty contrast there. Like, a lot North American model is very conservationist. Other models, less so to certain extents.
Well, I think that I'm just gonna jump in real quick.
Sure.
I think the other really cool thing about the North American model is it really allows wildlife to be wild. Like,
Yes.
if you look at wildlife conservation in Sweden, and in Scandinavia, they're very numbers focused. Like, there are 20 wolves in this population, and if there are over 20 wolves, I'm going to kill them till we get down to 20. And in the North American model, it's like, dude, I think that the ecosystem can support 20 wolves. It might not, but I don't really care. Like, I'm gonna try to get it to be the best and the best, the best and the highest it can be, and the wolves are gonna do what wolves are gonna do.
Yeah, it allows for a lot more slack and fuzziness in the population modeling, which we know has to exist because these population models are not exact sciences anyway. And a lot of these other models they treat those numbers as hard, very, very hard facts of this is exactly how many this ecosystem can support and no less. This is the carrying capacity and not one wolf more.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that has to do with just the constraint, at least for European side of things, is just space constraints more than anything.
I think it's
really
social. It's really we have said that they are going to be this many, so that's how many they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a look at Scandinavia, they can support more wildlife if they wanted to, but there's a lot of the landowner's rights in management, and I'm getting way ahead.
No, that's a good thing to contrast too, though. That's because that's an easy one to mention too. Is a lot of these other kind of ethics of wildlife management. You could say there's a different line drawn on who owns wildlife and when you own wildlife, and we'll get to that.
Yeah,
let's dig into it.
But so it's essentially in a lot of the older, or call them European models, the landowner owns the wildlife. They're on their land. That means you own them. In the North American model, fundamentally, no one owns the wildlife. And we'll get into what that means. But there's a few other things I want to touch on first. And like I said, we'll get to there. Before we dig in too much more, some quick terminology stuff, because I'm going to probably say things, and I think we all do it. Wildlife conservation and wildlife management, kind of mostly the same thing. I will use those terms interchangeably, even though they're not exactly interchangeable. It's just, just so people know. Same thing with wildlife biology. That's the field or profession. But you could say wildlife biology or wildlife management, and you can kind of use them interchangeably. So I'm just going to throw that out there as please don't come at me because I'm using different terms different times. It's wildlife biology, you could say maybe there's a little bit more research aspect to it. Wildlife biologists study, direct, and do wildlife conservation and wildlife management. But so it's also lots of other job titles that do wildlife management, but maybe don't have the study part of it, technicians and that sort of thing. Couple other things. Stakeholders. I want to talk about what a stakeholder is in the context of wildlife biology, because we're gonna have to get to it. There's really just somebody that has an interest in what we're doing, and by an interest I mean not ooh, that's neat, as much as I care about it. There's really
it
four.
Can be that's
well, it can
if you're
be.
interested.
But in the context of the North American model, I would say there's kind of four types of stakeholders, right? There's paid stakeholders, like literally stakeholders that have paid into the system, and we will get to that. There's engaged stakeholders, which are people that care about what we're doing. There's people that are both paid and engaged, and then there's people that are neither. So paid and engaged should be self-explanatory. Stakeholders that are neither paid nor engaged, it's the general public that is completely uninformed. They don't even realize that they are stakeholders in what we are doing for wildlife management in the country. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not one of those people because you care at least a little bit.
Or I just called you a bastard, and I apologize a little bit.
Well, fundamentally, you are all stakeholders because you are all at some point impacted by wildlife management.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not, you are dependent.
Whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the United States, we have something called the public trust, which we will get to as well. But that by default means you're a stakeholder in how we do wildlife management. Now, if I ever, when we go on later, there's gonna be points where I talk about like paid stakeholders. Just assume, for the purposes of the discussion, that they're engaged too. Because if they're just paid into the system but they don't care what goes on, I don't worry about them as much.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely happens.
Oh, it definitely happens. It happens a lot, actually. We'll get to that when we start talking about PR money.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, they've got to do a little bit of history. Because the North American model is not a thing that existed on paper until very, very recently. But we built it before we called it that, I guess is the best way to say that. So, like, we're going to go back to the late 1800s. Commercial exploitation, the fancy hats, right? The millinery industry, market hunting. A lot of these factors had just kind of decimated a lot of the wildlife populations in the country. Some of that was, on purpose, like I said, for exploitation purposes. Some of it was kind of accidental. Some of it was, call it genocidal. We talk about buffalo. And
I think the two biggest examples we can use that may be the biggest charismatic ones are the extinction of the buffalo, either on purpose. That one's like multifaceted.
Yeah,
well,
extirpation.
Like, a little bit of genocide.
Yeah. Sorry,
well,
extirpation.
Yeah.
Extirpation.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of genocide because they're recognized as a food and everything source for a lot of the Great Plains Indians. There was some extraction. People probably used them for food and blankets when you're settling and stuff like that, and also extraction of these tongues are really good and we don't need the rest of this. I think that's a really good version of of wiping or trying to wipe a species off the map, and beavers, I think, are another one, at least in the early portions of the country, the United States existence.
I was thinking
1700s.
The Carolina parakeet.
Oh shit! I don't even think about that one.
There's your millenarian trait. Carolina parakeet, and passenger pigeon.
Yep.
Ooh, yep. Passenger pigeon.
But anyway, So
we've done this a number of times with a number of species.
Yeah, we've done it a lot of times. So like by the late 1800s, you kind of started getting these like conflicts though, building between I guess these commercial interests driving a lot of that stuff, and what we could just kind of sort of call the general public, but they're not really the general public because we're really just talking about wealthy white urban sport hunters, and that's where a lot of this movement starts, I guess. So you get people everybody's not favorite. No one has favorite presidents. Teddy Roosevelt. No. You get people like Teddy Roosevelt and George Bird Grinnell, which is a great name for the guy who would. Right? Yeah. His middle name's Bird, and it gets better because he was the original sort of founder of what would become the Audubon Society. Except
no shit.
He sort of didn't. He did, but then the 2 chapters he started closed. And then they started up again later without him. But he did do it first. So, yeah, it gets some... But anyway, they kind of had this like, hey, you know what? It's kind of getting a little hard to have a successful big game hunt. What's up with that? And that's literally how this started, of like, hey, maybe we should think about actually regulating what people are doing to the wildlife in this country, because maybe they're not unlimited? Question marks?
Impossible. I was brought up in an age of excessive capitalism, and the environment will continue to be perfect forever. Oh, wait, hang on a second. What's that ice cap melting?
Yeah. John, have you ever heard of something called the Boone and Crockett Club?
Well, yes, because I think I tried to ask them for money once.
Okay. That makes sense.
But I don't know what they are. I don't know.
Well, so back then they started as a kind of a social club. Again, this is Grinnell and Teddy Roosevelt and some other old rich white dudes, and they started this club. You just start a little social club with your super wealthy dudes and the
drinking buddies. Yes.
Yep. And the point of the club, in their words, was to take charge of all matters pertaining to the enactment of and carrying out of game and fish laws. So that's all they were going to do.
Just a small
little thing. Which, like, it's very funny, too, because, like, at that point, they're kind of, like, they covered their bases, because there weren't much in the way of game and fish laws. So first we got to enact some, and then I guess we'll carry them out. I don't know. Yeah. It's, they were one of those old OG, like, lobbying kind of groups, social clubs for the uber wealthy. They never really had anything to do with carrying out game and fish laws. That part went away. But they were arguably instrumental in a lot of the early wildlife management and conservation legislation in this country. They still exist today, like you said. You can't ask them for money for certain things. They mostly exist as an avenue to kind of formalize dick measuring contests for big game hunters. I don't know, Calvin, you disagree with that?
They keep a track of the largest scores for various hunted species.
Yeah.
Scores being like, how big is this animal?
Yeah.
And so they'll score everything from like deer you shot to sheds that were picked up. To elephant, anything you could shoot, they'll score.
Yeah, I want to say,
I got nothing against them.
No,
it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't. That's not how I use wildlife. But it's fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's whatever. It's just funny that they still exist anyway. But I would say their more important legacy is their contributions to the North American conservation law. So the two big ones that they were really, really involved in was the Lacey Act, which made it a federal crime to poach or illegally transport wildlife in one state. So basically moving it across state lines. And then there were a lot of people lifting on this one, but they were also a big part for the passage of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act in 1918, which protects migratory bird species in the United States from take or harvest, except for certain tasty waterfowl. But that, we have exceptions for lots of things. But two big chunks of conservation legislation that they were heavily involved in. If you were paying attention to what I said about the Lacey Act too, you might have noticed that the Lacey Act was making it a crime to do something which was already illegal. Like they made it a crime to transport and sell something that you poached. And the poaching part was already illegal. So what was the point? The point,
it has to be like interstate commerce, right?
Yeah, and that's why the feds do get to be involved in that. It gave it a little bit more teeth, and at this time, though, most wildlife and conservation legislation, most game regulations, all that kind of stuff, those were being developed by states. We could do a whole civics class on states and the feds and
on states'
rights. Yeah, no. But no, around this time, a lot of the states were kind of developing their own legal frameworks for wildlife conservation and game management and that sort of thing.
And this is all like the turn of the 18th to 19th century.
Late
1800s,
18th, early
1900s.
late 1800s, early 1900s.
So in my state, we
also Canada. We'll throw Canada in there too. They were also developing a very similar. Like, there's a reason it's called the North American model and not the United States model. Canada is heavily involved in this. When Canada basically started putting their own legal frameworks together, at least partly because a lot of these dudes were all drinking buddies on both sides of that.
They're all friends
on both sides of that border. But yeah, they followed kind of our. I won't say they followed, but they developed this framework. Simultaneously rather than basically sticking with the the English or the British model or whatever you would want to call that. But yeah, sorry, Calvin, were you going to say something else?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to throw in there about the Migratory Bird Act. Like, in case you're wondering why it's illegal to shoot woodpeckers that are hammering on your house, it's because of the hat trade, and that's like we almost lost all migratory birds to hats, and we had people eating them. Which people eat songbirds in Europe, but we don't do that in the U.S. because of the Migratory Bird Act. And also, you shouldn't eat songbirds. They're cute little buddies.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah.
They're cute little dudes.
They're just little guys.
Yeah, they really are.
They're just little guys. So anyway, that kind of brings us to the next little bit of history and development of this kind of model, which is a name that probably a lot of people recognize, even if they don't really know why, and have never read Sand County Almanac. That's our boy, Aldo Leopold.
He's right there. Quick story. So when I was younger, when I was first starting into natural resources, I thought Aldo Leopold was overrated because everyone kept talking about him. As I have aged, I gotta say, Aldo Leopold, Gifford Pinchot, correctly rated, which is everyone talked about them all the time because you have to, because if we had listened to them like we should have, we'd be in a much better place. But we never listened. So
I'm a firm believer if we listen to Leopold more, 75% of our problems in the conservation field would have been fixed.
Oh yeah,
50 years ago, dead serious.
That's one. And I mean, God, for the time too, not a problematic guy.
That's the highest pitched.
I mean,
for a 1900s man, yeah.
I mean,
he probably still called my Italian ancestors slurs.
Oh, I'm sure.
But fine, whatever.
I'm sure.
Yeah, he did shoot wolves and help an extra pace. Stuff,
well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that because
he comes better. Dan.
Yes, exactly. No, that is one of the things I fucking love about Leopold is he has this willingness to admit I fucked up, I was wrong. Oh, maybe I should change my outlook on how we do things based on observations and evidence and think like a fucking scientist. I don't
even think about a scientist.
Dude used to advocate for shit like complete predator eradication and there was some giant wetland or some shit that he wanted to drain to create
Horicon Marsh.
Yeah,
there you go. I'm a Wisconsinite originally, so that's why you talked a lot about it.
And then comes back later oh yeah, that's terrible. We shouldn't do that. That's actually awful. And here's all the reasons why. And it's wow. Amazing.
Okay, we gotta focus or we're never gonna get through.
Oh, I know. But yeah, so
we haven't gotten all the points.
No, we haven't even gotten to the pillars or whatever. But anyway, no. So Aldo Leopold though, he's kind of the seed of this development of an idea that's really maybe we should create wildlife management as an actual profession. Maybe it should be something that people do professionally and actually know what they're about. Up until this point, pretty much you just had some game wardens who just focused on enforcing laws. They're not doing wildlife management. They're not doing population management. They're not doing habitat management. They're just enforcing laws, which is just, harvest and bag limits and that kind of thing.
Anti-poaching
stuff. And a lot of them were political appointees too. Which was also something that Leopold hated. He wanted to get rid of that. He wanted to professionalize the field. And apart from game wardens at the time, you just had foresters. You didn't have wildlife biologists. You didn't have wildlife professionals.
And
the foresters
barely had foresters.
And this is something I was going to ask you. Is like, because my impression from everything I've read at the time is that foresters of that time they were much more closer to what we just call loggers today than foresters as we understand them. Is that fair to say?
There's like not even enough of them to really say that there are foresters. Like there's like a couple dozen, because like you're talking about like the early 1900s, and like the first forestry schools were established like at that same time. So there's like so few of them, it doesn't like really matter. Like when you say
it's like it's a dozen guys, and they're all like half German or something like that.
Trained
like,
at the Biltmore and at Gray Towers.
Yeah.
But it's so few, it doesn't actually matter.
Okay.
I mean, you start to get
your
into
foresters are doing like. Well, yeah, and as I say too, your foresters like are so multifunctional at this time, and they also have to care for thousands and thousands of acres, and maybe there's a state forester for your entire state, and that's the guy that does all of your state forest management. Like a job that's now done by 15, 20, 50 people is done by one dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and they're doing projects like replanting. What's that huge forest that used to be the Biltmore Estate? It's not the Monongahela. It's got a really weird name, but like they're like reforesting huge areas that were deforested. So there's not really functionally foresters at this time.
Okay. So yeah, so there aren't really foresters at the time. There's basically just loggers and whatever
admin professionals. I'd
say administrative professionals
happen to know what a tree is.
Yeah,
Leopold.
There's still foresters in like the medieval approach to forester. Like those, like Robin Hood would know like these guys.
But yeah, so Leopold at the time though was really looking at the forest as an actual ecosystem too, which I think is he's kind of unique for that as well. He's maybe one of the first people I know of to really write about that. He's got there's a line I pulled from one of his papers or something, like where he's like the forest is the timber, water, forage, farm, recreative, game, fish, and aesthetic resources of the areas under our jurisdiction. So it's the whole thing.
It's everything. Yeah.
And that is also including
not ambitious.
and it's all and it's also including the human dimensions though of it.
Yeah.
It's including that conservation in the sense of use, forage, farm, recreation, and aesthetics.
Yeah, the fact that he has recreation in there at that point in time, like he's probably still thinking about just as hunters, but he's actually recognizing that people use the woods for some sort of enjoyment rather than extractive. In the case of,
I mean, shit, of course he was. He
Pinchot.
fucking loved being in the woods.
But like also like at the same time too, like Muir, like his whole thing is like a spiritual connection or something like that. It wasn't just like enjoyment, it was like more religious to him than that. And like that's not a recreational activity, seeking a spiritual relationship. Like that's not it,
Okay, we gotta focus. We
sorry.
We can't talk about your spirituality.
Okay.
Shut up.
Not just because I don't like Muir.
So this is stuff that Leopold had thought about for a long time, though. I mean, we're talking 20 plus years of his career thinking about the development of wildlife management as a profession, and by about 1930, I think is when a lot of that stuff kind of coalesced. And there was a publication that him and I'm trying to remember the guy's name on it. I'm blanking, but it's called An American Game Policy, which is the first one that I could find that really kind of brought a lot of these ideas into a single place about, we're not going to just talk about harvest and bag limits. It's not going to just be restrictive in the sense of like, statutes and laws and stuff, but also we need to have something to do conservation and restoration where needed. And so it's kind of the first thing that had a framework for like how to actually protect and conserve and restore wildlife populations and habitats, and honestly like what a wildlife management agency should look like, right down to like, hey, we're gonna need some science geeks, we're gonna need some guys with boots on, we're gonna need some administrative administrators, like, we're going to need all these people, and here's about how many of them and what their backgrounds should be like. It was kind of the first thing that I would say, like, put pen to paper, as wildlife biology and wildlife management is a profession distinct from forestry and distinct from agriculture and distinct from all these other fields, which we're still very tightly tied to. But yeah.
Oh yeah, no,
it's crazy well thought out.
Yeah, he was wrong about very few things.
Yeah, and again, when he would circle back to it and admit it. Like, the shit he was wrong about, he generally figured out that he was wrong about it, which is not super common. Right. Anyway, so
we're done. We're done.
We're done with Leopold for now. We're done with Leopold for now. We could have just done a whole episode on him.
Okay.
Or, like, honestly, you could probably do a whole freaking podcast
bonus series. Give us $2 on Patreon. We don't have a Patreon yet, but
all right. Okay. So before we get into what the model is, because we have not gotten to the model yet.
Christ on sale.
There's more like kind of landmark, I think, background legislation, kind of laws and shit that maybe people have heard about, and maybe they know some of what it is, but I think it's important to talk about. So duck stamps, which is there's a real name for it, but we all just call it the duck stamp law. There's also the Migratory Bird Conservation Act, but whatever. You guys know what a duck stamp is? I know Calvin does. John, do you?
Is it literally a duck on a USPS stamp?
Yes, but also, do you know what else it is?
Oh God, no.
Okay,
I just think it's cool pictures of ducks.
So the first thing I mentioned, the Migratory Bird Conservation Act. Sorry, to backtrack a little bit. Migratory Bird Treaty Act, because we're talking about laws and they all sound the fucking same. Remember I said Migratory Bird Treaty Act protects migratory birds except waterfowl, which famously extremely migratory. But why aren't they in there?
Very tasty.
Because they're very tasty, and we like to hunt and eat them and everything.
Sure.
But they're still regulated federally. The duck stamps and the Migratory Bird Conservation Act are part of that regulatory framework. So that first one, the Migratory Bird Conservation Act, basically says the feds basically was like, hey, the feds are allowed to buy wetlands and manage them as waterfowl habitat. Okay, cool. Okay. With what fucking money? That's the duck stamp law. Creates this duck stamp, which if you want to hunt waterfowl in the U.S., you have to buy a duck stamp. The money from the duck stamp goes to purchasing and managing those properties, those lands for waterfowl habitat.
It's the next stamp tax. And we didn't fight a revolution.
We didn't fight a revolution over.
Well, because it's completely optional to buy, and that's where you get a lot of non-consumptive users of wildlife involved in wildlife. Because you can just buy duck stamps. You don't have to buy a hunting license. You can just buy a duck stamp. You can
buy a duck stamp.
You buy the post office, and then
all 10 of our listeners go buy 10,000 duck stamps immediately. Okay. Save the Fish and Wildlife Service budget.
A guy that I worked with, a guy I lived with in grad school, he bought a duck stamp for his partner who didn't hunt and his kid who was 2, as a way to just keep funding, wildlife management. You could just buy, and you could buy. They sell them at the post office because that's where, if you wanted to hunt ducks in 1930, where were you going to buy this stamp? The post office.
The post office. I mean, I wouldn't go buy 10,000 of them because they're like $25 a pop. So
yeah, they're not cheap.
We have rich listeners. I don't know, but buy one, yeah.
Okay, so the next little bit of background law, legislation, whatever that I think people definitely need to know about, because I know I've mentioned it multiple times. PR, Pittman-Robertson Act. So if you ever hear me say PR or PR money, I almost always mean this and not public relations. Calvin, I know you know. John, do you know what Pittman-Robertson is?
No. Okay. I haven't even heard of this one.
Okay, you haven't. This is awesome. Okay, so what the Pittman-Robertson Act does is it establishes an excise tax on firearms, ammo, archery equipment, and that excise tax goes to funding wildlife management. It goes to wildlife management agencies, state wildlife management agencies.
Also, scopes and binoculars.
No.
Wait, I'm fine on something?
No, I thought that too, and then I went back and looked. It does not include optics.
Oh, really?
It does not include. There's a whole bunch of shit it doesn't include actually. Which
Oh yeah, camping
They
stuff is
anticipate
not
you
there.
just to be raw dog.
air
guys, come
guns
on.
are not included. Muzzle loaders are not included. Tree stands, cameras, decoys, calls, blinds, and optics.
Oh, that's just missing.
None of those are included.
Well, and this is a different episode, but there's a whole debate about including recreational stuff into PR money, so that way the non-consumptive users have a seat at the table. But that's a different episode. And also
Well,
the
I think
recreation
we'll
is
get
right.
there at the end of this because that's
Yeah.
we're going to talk about problems of the North American model, so we can get to that.
Okay. All right.
But
I
yeah,
don't know
so
how we're
remember
gonna get there.
remember that
It's an
whole
hour.
So remember the framework for wildlife management agencies, all that stuff that I mentioned Leopold had in the American Game Policy publication. So like Pittman-Robertson Act is how all that shit gets paid for. Asterisk. What is the asterisk? There's a couple states that have done even cooler shit than that. Missouri and Arkansas both have conservation sales tax, which is freaking sweet. And it's like an eighth of
Iowa tried to.
Iowa tried to.
tried to.
Yeah, I remember that.
We tried to, and the legislators refused after I think near on a decade now. They refused to actually pass like again, like you were saying, AJ, the eighth of a penny, and it's a recreational trust fund, and because we can't have taxes or nice things in Iowa, those assholes refused to fund it.
Minnesota also has. Also has a legacy, what they call the legacy amendment, which is a similar thing. It's another little. That one is 3/8 of a penny.
Ooh.
But it's only, I guess the legislation is only good for 25 years, and it's split up amongst a few things, but some of that's going to wildlife management as well. Missouri's, I'm going to go back because Missouri, my home state where I was born, going to toot the horn there. Missouri's got a lot of problems, as we all know, so I have to take my opportunities to be like, hey, they did do something cool. Theirs is actually a constitutional amendment. So it's not going to disappear without a lot of work. So how does Pittman-Robertson money actually get to like wildlife management though? Like how does that work? The feds distribute it to the state agencies through something called WSFR, the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Program. And this is all boring, but it's important. There's a formula about how the money gets to the states and how much each state gets. An important thing. Most of the time, if states want this Fed money, they have to provide match. They have to match WSFR funding at some level. It's usually 25%. And usually states are getting that money from like sales of their own hunting licenses or, specialty license plates, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
A lot of the time, there's still money in the WSFR pot for states that they have to leave on the table because they can't come up with enough match. So you might, because if you dig into this, you can see, the feds collected, umpteen $1 million in PR money in 2025. That's all going to the states. Not really. Some of it's just kind of sitting in an account because the states couldn't come up with enough match to actually get it. Also, this money has to go for, quote, wildlife restoration projects. So we're going to do another little detour because I know Calvin's like, oh my God, can we just get to the model? No, Calvin, I know you know the answer. John.
Oh God.
What is wildlife?
Fuck you. I don't know.
Is a frog a wildlife?
A frog is wildlife, yes.
Calvin?
Why?
Depends on the state.
Pennsylvania? Exactly.
Fuck me.
What
is it? Okay, is a frog like a fish?
Is a bug?
Oh God damn it!
Is a bugs a wildlife? No,
Depends
bugs are
on
not
the
wildlife
state.
according to the feds.
I actually do not call bugs wildlife because then I'd have to know about insects, and I can only handle so many kingdoms of life in my head at one time.
No,
so
I'm with you, man.
I agree.
Fuck them bugs.
Entomology different. This is different. That's a different thing, man.
They got
So
more
yeah,
legs.
since like there's like the mid 50s, Fish and Wildlife Service basically issued a rule, or I don't know what they called it. It's not a law, but it's
probably a rule.
It's a rule or
It's
something.
a rule then.
That Pittman-Robertson money, so WSFR funds, can only go to birds and mammals, fur and feathers, baby. Anything else, we don't care about.
Oh.
See, that makes me feel bad for the
A
herds.
salamander's a plant. I don't know. I guess it's a plant. I don't know. Make the rules.
They're also fish and wildlife. So put the fish back into fish and wildlife. Make fish great again.
Well, we'll get to fish. We'll get to fish.
That's a t-shirt idea.
So yeah, and like I said, this is just an internal rule. It's weird that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has not ever like expanded the definition of wildlife that they created for apparently an arbitrary reason, but they never have. So PR money can't be used to fund restoration projects for any of those species directly. Now, luckily, in a lot of cases, there's usually enough like overlap in habitat requirements and that sort of thing. I was gonna say. So like, you can kind of squeak management through under.
I've done things like that where it's like, I'm definitely managing for game. I'm actually managing for this really cool flower that I found.
Like I've certainly never done anything, for gopher tortoises and pretended it was for quail. Like, you can do that pretty easily.
Yeah, pheasants. So I mean, my perfect example for me is, it's like it's pheasants. Well, it also happens to help thousands of grassland birds, that are basically lost 90% of their habitat. It's pheasants is what's written on the application for cost share for my private landowners, but it's actually for in my head it's actually for grassland birds.
Yeah. But obviously, that doesn't always. There's that still limits things. Like the example I have is you can't really pretend that the salamander breeding pond that you're trying to restore is actually a duck pond. Like that's not
wood ducks, baby, wood ducks.
That's not gonna fly. But so that's kind of the quick and dirty on PR money, Pittman Robertson, and how a lot of this stuff gets funded. Now. We told you we'd get to fish. The wet counterpart to Pittman Robertson is the much better named Dingle Johnson Act. Yes.
What is this?
Yes.
This is the Dingle Johnson Act.
It's the two dudes that sponsored the legislation, but like the Dingle Johnson Act. Come on,
you gotta give us a name alert with that.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah. I don't. Do you do name alerts for hyphenated things like that though? It's two different.
Dingle,
names.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's the Dingle Johnson Amendment. Is it? I don't know. It's already flown out of my head.
Yep. But it is almost exactly the same thing as the Pittman Robertson Act, but it's for fish. So it's fishing tackle, fishing lures, boat fuel, like marine fuel, for like if you fill up your bass boat at a dock or whatever. That money goes towards it goes to WISFR. It's still wildlife and remember. Wildlife and sport fish restoration. Sport fish. So, no darters, no mollusks, none of that shit. Sport fish. It's the stuff we like to catch either because it's tasty or they're fun to catch. So again, similar limitations there. It has to be sport fish. But that's how a lot of this stuff gets funded.
I think it's important to point out both of these are voluntary excise taxes that were put in place solely for the benefit of wildlife. Like,
yes,
these were, rallied for by hunters and fishers, for the benefit of these organisms. Like this, I don't think this happens today, but like it's one of the best things that's ever happened to wildlife in North America.
So Pittman Robertson went through like several like iterations and stuff. Like originally, archery equipment was not included. The dude, I can't remember the guy's first name. The founder and like CEO of Bear Archery, like that brand. I just can't remember the guy's first name. He like was instrumental in lobbying to get archery equipment added to PR money because he wanted it to be, he wanted bow hunters to be part of that. He wanted them paying and he wanted them to be part of that funding source and everything. Like, dude was like, yes, please tax the shit that I'm selling. Like, we will pay the 11% or 10% or whatever the archery equipment is. Like, he asked to be added to that. That's a weird fucking thing. I don't know. I have a hard time like thinking of like a corporation and like a CEO of a company asking the government to put an excise tax on their products for some purpose that does not directly benefit them. I mean, it's just a wild time because this was like in the 70s.
Yeah. Oh, I could we can go off on a tangent about it, but I think it's just they recognize that, hey, we'll make more money. Yeah, we'll lose a little bit of money in, the next quarter or whatever, next 5 years, but like we'll steadily have more income coming in because, hey, there's more shit to hunt or fish.
But also, it feels good to do the right thing. Sometimes you can do the right thing. You can
also do the right
sometimes
thing.
You can do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I like to believe that sometimes people do, in fact, do the right thing for a not shitty reason.
Yeah.
All right. So the last little bit of kind of like background American conservation legislation that we're gonna hit on, and I think honestly after we finish on this would probably be a good time to cut. So the last little bit of kind of landmark legislation that I think we need to talk about that has a little bit of bearing on the North American model, although not as much as you would hope, is the Endangered Species Act. Now, the Endangered Species Act, I assume a lot of people are familiar with it, even our one or two non-American listeners. It does a whole lot of stuff. We could do a whole episode on it and how it's sad. But the big thing that kind of applies here is that it prohibits the take of listed species. And so, what is take? Calvin,
John,
take this one.
Okay.
Ha. No. I'm just going to give you a break, John.
Take is anything that damages or harms, critically harms wildlife species. Or ESA species. So it could be like killing a turtle, but it could also like intentionally like shooting it like a box turtle. But it could also be like destroying key habitat for that organism.
Yeah, well, and we're gonna touch on that.
Broad definition.
So the words used in the ESA itself is kill, harm, or harass, and harm is one that we will circle back to because there's a whole thing going on right now. I guess by the time we ever release this, it'll have been settled one way or another. Probably
not. Probably goes to the Supreme Court.
I don't know. Well, anyway, sorry. But so it says you can't take listed species without a really, really good reason. And there's a lot of permitting involved if you want to go down that road. But it also says federal agencies have to use whatever their authority is, whatever an agency is doing, they have to use whatever is in their power to conserve listed species, which can mean a whole lot of things because they never really define that. So pick your agency and you'll get a different answer there. And it also says that federal agencies and anything funded by them, so if any project that uses federal funding cannot jeopardize take listed species or designated critical habitat.
So can I use an example for at least on the small private side?
Go for it.
So we have the Indiana bat. It's a critically endangered species that has been listed. It's threatened due to white nose syndrome primarily. We don't really have which is a fungus that basically decimates or whatever 90% kills 90% of a population is in Latin. So all of the projects that I get through federal cost share as a person who works with private landowners, all of that money, we cannot remove trees in Iowa we cannot cut them down during the growing season, defined as April through September. All trees have to remain standing if we're doing like a TSI project to release our oak trees and stuff like that. All trees have to remain standing. We can't remove shagbark hickories, which have this really nice flaky bark that a lot of Indiana bats like to hide under and nest and roost. So we have to keep all of those in habitat as well. And theoretically, this is a private landowner. They can do kind of whatever they want. I'm not really that brushed up on the ESA, but like when they sign this document for federal funds, they have to now follow all of the laws associated with the ESA and, promise not to do all, damage the habitat or the potential habitat of these bats, which has caused some weird people to have some weird thoughts, and I don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So yeah, I would venture to say most people's interaction with the restrictions that the ESA has comes from anybody dealing with any of the USDA cost share programs. That's probably the most direct interaction, I would say, that members of the public would have, because now they are being held to these restrictions, these regulatory restrictions for listed species, in a way that they generally would not if they weren't getting that funding. So, and this is kind of related to the next thing I want to bring up. The ESA does. So we've been talking about wildlife. The ESA does provide for plants to be listed as like threatened and endangered.
Everything can be threatened and endangered.
Everything can be threatened and endangered. But because they're plants, there's like no protection for them. Unless you're talking about federal land. It's just vagaries of our legal system. Take of a listed plant species can only occur on federal lands. If you have, the example I pulled is if you got eastern prairie fringed orchid growing on your front lawn somehow, you can yank that fucker right out of the ground.
God damn it! Don't do that. If you know what it looks like and you have it, don't do that.
Unless,
I'll come to your house and find you.
And unless maybe the state you're living in has something that does protect plants, but generally speaking, plants are considered the property of the property owner to do with whatever you like, regardless of whether it's threatened, endangered, invasive, or not.
And that we will get to all of that later when we get into the North American model of wildlife management.
Yes, we will. So yeah, that was kind of a quick and dirty history of a lot of the background that needed to happen to get us to the thing that we're calling the North American model of wildlife conservation. But we haven't actually gotten to what the model is, and I think we're gonna have to save that for next week. What do you think, guys? I
think that sounds good. This is a good time to change.
We have to.
I would also like
some of us need to sleep.
Yeah. I also want to just point out to the listeners, before all of this happened, you just have to realize that so many species of wildlife went extinct without all of this stuff, and the world that we inhabit today is nothing like the world was in 1800. The wildlife densities are just so different, and the species we have lost are not coming back. So there's a real long list of reasons why we have all of these things, and they didn't come about for no good reason.
Yeah. And a lot of, I would say, in order for us to have built what we have now, in order for these movements to gain enough steam and have the movers and shakers care enough to actually get this conservation framework built, let's call it, that wasn't going to happen just because of the loss of the passenger pigeon and the Carolina parakeet. It needed to have, and this is sad to say, but it's probably not surprising, we needed to have these massive declines in the big charismatic species that people could see and care and know what it's the utilitarian standpoint. What is that good for? Well, you can eat it, right? Or it's a trophy species for big game hunters, that kind of thing. Sad to say it, but that's what gets people caring enough to actually, build this framework. They weren't going to do it for. They're not going to do it for the eastern prairie fringed orchid. They're not going to do it for
but
the
they're
striped
do it for
newt.
The monarch. But they're going to do it for the monarch because that's just a very.
Maybe.
Now,
or charismatic.
Now, maybe sorta, and arguably not as much as they should even now. But back then, forget it. That kind of stuff is not on anybody's radar.
And by back then, we mean as the 1970s is when the ESA gets passed. Back then, within living memory. We're not talking about the early 1800s. We're talking about in the 50s.
Oh yeah. For the ESA for sure.
Your grandparents, basically, if you're young enough. Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else either of y'all wanted to bring up or ask about while we have a little bit of time? Otherwise, I think we can cut it off, and then we'll come back next week and talk about the actual North American model and what it is and how it all kind of works and doesn't work.
The only thing I want to add is I love the North American model of wildlife management. I think it's the coolest thing. And I wish we had a similar thing in forestry, but we don't for some reasons we'll discuss.
The North American model.
I have no idea what any of that means.
I
can't wait to learn more.
I like it a lot. I think it has a lot of problems, but it's also much better than anything else that we've come up with so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Benjamin Franklin quote: "Democracy is the worst system."
The word, yeah.
Except for all the rest.
Except for all the other ones, yeah. No, it is very much like that. Like, yeah, of course there are problems. Of course there are things that need to be improved and changed and tweaked, and we'll get to all that. But yeah, it's I wouldn't even say arguably. I'd say it is the most successful model of wildlife conservation worldwide, and it's certainly influenced other efforts at wildlife conservation and management throughout the world.
The only other thing I have to say is America #1, baby.
Oh, I was gonna say, we're not gonna do an American exceptionalism thing with the North American model.
America #1, baby. Let's go. Undefeated.
Stay winning. Yeah, tariffs, whatever.
Don't look at the rest of it. Just look at don't look at how we got to the North American model. Just look at what exists now.
I forgot the thing we were going to talk about with the ESA was the change on the definition of harm. I totally forgot about that.
Because the fucking fake wolves too. All right, that's a later episode though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do a whole ESA thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see that.
Anyways, right. Bye everyone.
Well, this has been Seedpod. Thank you for listening.
Oh yeah, right.
So we'll be back in a little bit, and our next episode will be a completion of the North American model of wildlife management.
That's it. We'll see you next
time.
time.
Into the pillars of the North American model of wildlife
pillars.
management.
We love a good set of pillars.
Love a pillar. Love a Corinthian. Love a what are the other kinds of pillars?
I don't fucking know
long
any kinds of pillars.
Pillars of wisdom.
5 prayers a day. Fasting.
Hajj.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've lost everyone at this point. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.